Okay, so imagine this. Taking inspiration from, well, a fictional detective, maybe the most famous one ever, Sherlock Holmes, and using his methods for something really practical, maybe even a bit dry sometimes, like modern compliance work. Like using his famous eye for detail, that analytical brain, to catch, say, financial crime or corporate misconduct. It sounds pretty intriguing, right?
It really does. And what's fascinating, I think, is that even though he was working, late 19th century,
Right.
the basic principles he used, they're still incredibly relevant for compliance pros today, especially when you're talking about sifting through just mountains of data looking for those little red flags.
Absolutely. And that connection is exactly what our deep dive is about today. We've been looking at this article. It's called Sherlock Holmes, A Guide to Compliance Analytics.
That's the one, yeah. And it really focuses in on lessons from one specific story, the Sign of Four. The article makes a really strong case that this particular story offers these sort of timeless insights for compliance officers who are using analytics to spot irregularities, potential problems.
So for you listening, our mission today is basically to unpack that wisdom. You want to figure out how thinking a bit like Holmes can genuinely sharpen your skills as a compliance professional. Help you use the data, the tech you have, maybe more effectively.
Yeah, really put those Holmesian methods to work for you.
Exactly. This deep dive is tailored to do just that.
It's about seeing how this, master of observation from fiction can actually give us a practical blueprint for handling compliance analytics now.
Right.
The article points out that Holmes' structured, really analytical way of solving problems is super relevant when compliance teams use data tools to find anomalies in, huge corporate operations.
Yeah, he wasn't just winging it, was he? Or going purely on gut feel. He had a system, a method.
Definitely.
And this source says the Sign of Four is packed with examples that show this system working, giving us real lessons.
Indeed. And that brings us neatly to the first big lesson the article pulls out, the art of discernment.
Discernment. Okay, yeah, that sounds very Holmes. There's that famous quote, something about the small points being important.
That's it. The smallest point may be the most essential. It's like fundamental to how he worked. He could walk into a room and just see things other people completely missed. A tiny smudge, a weird bit of dust, how a shoe was worn down.
And the Sign of Four has specific examples of this kind of micro-level stuff.
It does, yeah. The article mentions how Holmes would notice, say, specific footprints, or even the types of mud stuck to someone's boots.
Ah, telling him where they'd been.
Exactly. Or even tiny scratches on things that looked totally unimportant to anyone else. For Holmes, these weren't just random bits. They were crucial clues, waiting to be understood.
Okay, so how does a compliance person today, staring at screens, at dashboards, apply that kind of focus? We're not usually looking at muddy boots in the server room.
No, probably not. But the parallel is actually quite direct. The article argues that just like those tiny physical clues for Holmes, seemingly tiny, maybe insignificant data points in your compliance systems, they can be the critical signs of hidden risks.
Like what?
Oh, things like fraud, non-compliance, misconduct. It might be a transaction value that's just a fraction outside the norm, or an unusual login time for a key system, maybe a small mismatch in inventory figures, things that are easy to overlook.
Ah, okay, so the lesson is really about cultivating that meticulous mindset, but applying it to the digital footprint instead.
Precisely. It's about developing an analytical eye that's really tuned in to spotting those small inconsistencies, those outliers, within these huge, complex data sets that, might otherwise just get lost in the noise.
And the source gives practical ways teams can actually do this, right? It's not just saying pay more attention.
It's exactly right. It really highlights the role of modern compliance software. I mean, these tools are built to do the heavy lifting, sifting through massive data volumes, automatically flagging weird transactions, access patterns, other outliers. That's like technology boosting your discernment.
But it also mentioned training, didn't it?
Yes, and this is super important. The article stresses that tech alone isn't the answer. You need to implement training, things like simulations, case study workshops, kind of like Holmes reviewing his old cases.
Right.
That helps analysts sharpen their judgment, learn what kinds of subtle details have actually mattered in finding real issues before. You're building the human skill alongside the tech.
And I guess data visualization tools fit in here too, helping the human eye actually see those small points in the data.
Absolutely. The source mentions that data viz can be like Holmes's magnifying glass, right? It takes complex data and puts it into graphical formats that make it much easier for analysts to spot those small anomalies. the deviations that might be buried if you're just looking at rows and rows of numbers. It's that strategic, mix-trained human judgment, plus the right tech support, that makes discernment really work in compliance.
That makes a lot of sense. Spot the crucial tiny details. Okay, so what's the second big takeaway from the article?
The second key lesson the article emphasizes is the importance of establishing baselines. You need good baselines for effective pattern recognition.
Baselines.
Yeah.
Right. Knowing what normal looks like before you can spot the abnormal.
Precisely. Holmes totally understood this. You can't identify something unusual if you don't first have a really deep grasp of what normal activity looks like in that specific situation.
How did he show that in the sign of 4, according to the source?
Well, the article talks about Holmes's incredibly detailed knowledge of London life.
Okay.
Its rhythms, how typical people behave, the predictable ways people and things moved around. His ability to instantly notice something out of place, that came directly from his deep baseline understanding of the city's normal pulse.
Okay, so applying that to compliance, it means really understanding the normal patterns of activity inside your own organization's operations.
Fundamentally, yes. The article is pretty clear. Effective compliance analytics depends on setting up robust benchmarks of what's expected.
So like typical transaction numbers or how long certain tasks usually take.
Exactly. Or standard employee behavior in certain systems, the usual flow of goods, things like that. Without a clear data-driven picture of this normal, trying to find something suspicious is like trying to hear one wrong note in a song you've never heard before.
Right, impossible. So how do compliance teams actually build those detailed baselines? It sounds like a lot of work.
It can be. The source points to using historical data and proper statistical analysis. And this means looking beyond just the last few weeks or months.
Okay.
It means collecting and analyzing big data sets over longer periods to really capture the regular patterns, any seasonal changes, cyclical stuff, the typical ranges under different conditions.
That definitely requires some serious data infrastructure and analytical skills.
It does. And the article even suggests using more advanced techniques like predictive analytics.
Okay, how does that help?
Well, it lets teams potentially move beyond just spotting deviations after they happen. By understanding historical trends and predicting future patterns, you might be able to anticipate issues before they fully emerge.
And I guess different parts of the business would have different normals, wouldn't they? Sales versus HR versus manufacturing.
Absolutely, which is exactly why the source really stresses cross-departmental collaboration. Compliance folks need to work closely with operations, finance, HR, you name it, to truly get the business processes behind the data.
Makes sense.
And continuous communication keeps those baselines accurate and relevant.
Yeah.
They need to reflect how the business actually works, not just be abstract numbers.
Okay, so lesson 2. Really know your organization's normal. Use data, stats, and talk to people across the business. Got it. What's lesson 3?
Lesson 3 moves into contextual analysis of data. Holmes famously never just looked at one clue by itself.
Right, he was always linking things up, seeing the web of connections.
Precisely. The article highlights that in the sign of 4, he didn't just find, say, a footprint and stop there. He analyzed it within the whole context, the crime scene, the people involved, everything known about the situation. Each bit of data was interpreted in relation to all the others to build the full picture.
And for compliance, that means.
It means adopting holistic data analytics strategies. The article is a good example. Think about a single financial transaction. Looked at alone, it might seem perfectly fine within normal limits.
Okay.
But when you analyze it in context, maybe cross-referencing it with HR data about the employee who did it, or vendor info, or even supply chain logs suddenly viewed as part of that bigger pattern, it might look highly suspicious.
So it's about breaking down those data silos, connecting the dots between different systems.
Exactly. By linking these separate data sources, financials, HR records, vendor lists, supply chain movements, even communication logs, compliance analytics can build that comprehensive view. And that's essential for uncovering those sophisticated misconduct schemes, the ones that are often designed to look totally innocent if you only see one piece at a time.
That sounds like a big technical hurdle, though. How does the source suggest teams actually do that effectively?
Well, the article points out that machine learning algorithms can really help here.
Okay.
These tools can automatically find and flag unusual correlations across different data sets, connections. A human analyst might easily miss helping to pinpoint potential risks much more efficiently.
So the tech helps find the links, but the humans still need to figure out what they mean.
Absolutely. The source still stresses the human side. Fostering that interdepartmental collaboration for easy data sharing is critical. You need to actually get the relevant data from across the company. And then, regular training on how to interpret these interconnected data points using these holistic frameworks, that empowers the compliance team to really grasp the full context and complexity of potential issues.
And having clear processes for actually doing the connecting.
Yes, definitely. Developing clear protocols for how you integrate these diverse data streams. That ensures analysts can quickly and accurately pull together the whole picture from information scattered across the business. It standardizes that vital connecting the dots process.
Okay, so lesson 3. Connect all the clues. Look at data holistically, not in silos. Right, moving on. Lesson 4 seems kind of obvious now with all the tech we have, but how does the Holmes angle fit?
Lesson 4 is leveraging technology and tools. And yeah, while Holmes mostly relied on his amazing brain and simple tools like his magnifying glass,
Sure.
the article points out how remarkably efficient and effective he was at gathering and analyzing evidence in the sign of 4 using the best methods available back then.
He was a master of using the resources he had, even if they seem basic to us now.
Exactly. And the connection for modern compliance is the absolute necessity of leveraging the best advanced technologies available now. You just cannot effectively apply those principles, discernment, baselining, context to, petabytes of data using only human brain power and maybe Excel.
So this is really about making those Holmesian principles work at scale efficiently, using today's power tools.
Precisely. The source highlights the critical need for things like AI, machine learning, computers learning from data and sophisticated algorithms to do fast, comprehensive analysis.
Okay.
Tools that can quickly pull together, analyze, and visualize data are essential. They let you spot potential patterns of misconduct much faster and intervene earlier, hopefully before things get really bad.
Are there specific kinds of tools the article flags as particularly useful?
It mentions advanced analytics software for real-time monitoring and predictive analysis. Specifically, this calls out things like natural language processing, NLP, which can analyze text.
Right, like emails or reports.
Exactly. And anomaly detection algorithms, which are designed specifically to find those subtle deviations we talked about earlier, buried deep in massive data sets.
And technology also helps with the collaboration piece we discussed.
Yes, absolutely. The source notes the value of investing in platforms that make it easy for compliance team members to collaborate and share data securely. That just streamlines the whole analytical workflow, from finding something to investigating it, leading to quicker, more joined-up responses.
So it's not just having the tech, but having the right tech, using it well, and making sure the team actually knows how to use it.
Precisely. The article really emphasizes continuously evaluating new technologies, keeping an eye on what's coming down the pike and integrating useful innovations. And, critically, ongoing training for staff so they're proficient with the tools combined with regular software updates. That maximizes the value you get from the tech investment and helps the team stay ahead of constantly evolving threats.
Okay, so leverage the best tools strategically to boost those core analytical methods. Makes sense. And finally, the 5th lesson.
The 5th and final lesson the article takes from Holmes's approach is continuous refinement and learning. Sherlock Holmes never just assumed his methods were perfect and stopped there.
No, he was always observing, always learning, tweaking his ideas, wasn't he?
Exactly. The article points out that through the sign of 4, and really all his cases, Holmes was constantly modifying his theories, adjusting his approach based on new evidence or insights he gained. He was flexible, responsive, always aiming to improve his process.
Right.
And compliance programs really need to adopt that same mindset, embrace continuous improvement.
So the way we do compliance analytics, the tech we use, it shouldn't be set in stone.
Not at all. The source argues you need to be constantly refining your algorithms, maybe updating detection thresholds as risks change, and really importantly, incorporating the lessons you learned from previous investigations.
Whether they worked or not.
Yes, whether they successfully caught something or maybe revealed a blind spot. Compliance analytics only gets sharper and more effective through that ongoing cycle of learning and adapting.
Like a feedback loop, kind of constantly getting smarter.
That's a great way to think about it. Regularly assessing and adjusting your methods based on real-world results, what worked, what didn't, what new threats popped up, that's key to staying ahead. The article suggests systematically reviewing past investigations, specifically to find improvement opportunities, much like Holmes might mentally replay an old case to see it differently.
And getting feedback from the people actually doing the work, the analysts?
Crucial. Adopting formal ways to get feedback from the analysts, Using the tools and interpreting the data every day is vital. They're the ones who see the practical hurdles and the nuances.
Okay.
And things like periodic reviews or audits of the whole analytical process and the tech stack also help find weaknesses, inefficiencies, or gaps that need fixing.
And this isn't just about the tech and the process, is it? It's about the people, too.
Absolutely. The source emphasizes fostering a whole organizational culture of continuous learning. That means encouraging training, going to industry conferences, sharing knowledge with peers, staying up to date on regulatory changes and new threats. It ensures that compliance teams themselves are constantly growing their skills and knowledge base.
So lesson 5 boils down to the people, the process, and the technology all being part of this ongoing cycle of learning and getting better.
Yeah, in synthesis, these 5 lessons, discernment, baselines, context, technology, and continuous refinement, they're really powerful principles. Drawn from Sherlock Holmes's methods in the Sign of 4, but then amplified by modern tech, they offer a pretty solid framework for compliance professionals trying to deal with today's complex and, frankly, ever-changing risk landscape.
And that brings us towards the end of this deep dive into how, maybe surprisingly, Sherlock Holmes can offer some really profound guidance for modern compliance analytics. We've explored seeing those critical details, knowing your operational normal, connecting data points holistically, using the best tech you can, and committing to always learning and improving.
As you think about maybe applying some of these ideas in your own work, here's something to consider. Sherlock Holmes operated in a world where, yeah, analytical principles were pretty timeless, but crime and society changed relatively slowly.
Right.
Today, compliance professionals, you rely on those same fundamental analytical principles, but the landscape, the tech, the sheer volume of data, the regulations, it's all shifting at incredible speed.
That leaves us with a really key question for you to think about. How can you ensure you effectively balance those timeless principles, vigilance, deduction, analysis, inspired by figures like Holmes, with the absolute necessity for continuous technological adaptability and learning in your own compliance work? It's a fascinating challenge, isn't it? As you keep trying to uncover the complexities hidden deep within the data.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day. One actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet, every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network. Available wherever you listen to podcasts.